Hello and welcome. It's Friday again. I'm Devina Gupta and you are with Work Life India. And today we have a very interesting topic. We are talking about something that is hidden in our world, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the houses we live in. Well, a lot of it is being built on somebody else's sweat and tears. And a lot of times from countries where labor exploitation is at its worst. We're talking about modern slavery, where a person is forced or coerced to work involuntarily, often in very despicable circumstances. Now, let's take you through some figures out here. But before that, let me introduce, I have two brilliant minds with me. I have Manoj Bhatt, who's country director of GoodWeave. His organization helps people spread awareness on how to end modern slavery. Welcome, Manoj. And we have Riya Singh. She's a young activist, particularly working on India's very, very complex caste system. Welcome, Riya. And we talk more about that. But before that, let me take you through some figures. Well, if you talk about modern slavery, 40.3 million people are forced in modern slavery across the world at any given point of time. According to the Global Slavery Index, 71% victims are women and girls. And of that, 18.3 million people are living in modern slavery in India alone. And that's a shocking statistics because according to the Global Slavery Index, in absolute number, that's the largest number of modern slaves in our world. So Manoj, let's start from you first. When we say modern slavery, which sectors come to your mind in India?
Most of the sectors which are dependent on the large informal sector workers in India, and that includes carpets, apparels, home textiles, footwears, gem and jewelry sector, even automobile sector, and of course agriculture is one of the biggest in that.
Agriculture, and it doesn't help that almost 85 to 90% of India's working force is actually in the informal sector, and that doesn't have any contractual labor. Why is it that the families are pushing their children and their family members into modern slavery?
It's a very complex issue, and there are many factors. The major factor is that the Indian families, despite their willingness and their dream to educate their kids, are not able to do that because we still have to, in India, we still have to improve our education system, and the right to education should be strengthened in a way that the children coming from very poor, outcast, or tribal communities are supported in a way that they can continue education in school. So when these parents see that their children are not able to learn in a school despite their support, they think that okay, maybe these children are not good enough to get educated, and if they come from the outcast communities, they also feel that maybe they are not that brilliant. So because of these, the parents themselves try to sometimes send their kids to places where they can learn.
Capitalism lowers working class pay. Now, is capitalism also to be blamed? Because Manoj, you actually work with businesses who are, and you ensure that they have a clean supply chain, that is risk-free supply chain. Is capitalism at the center of it? Because it's not only a humanitarian issue. When you look at countries like India, and as Chris has pointed out in another comment, and thanks for that, Chris, that it also depends on how cheap goods you can produce. There is a labor, there is a cheap goods production factory which this laborers seem to be doing. How much of modern slavery is due to this mindset of India being a destination for cheap labor, cheap production, and businesses want to cut down costs?
Yeah, definitely. In the global trade, the companies always look for high quality but cheaper goods, and the countries and the companies have to compete for that. But the companies, the global brands, need education in terms of what is the impact of their behavior, how the companies who are producing are going to supply them on a specific price point. So they need to educate about that, and we do that work. We work with the global brands to make sure that they understand in what conditions the work is happening. We help them see beyond the main factories, which may be very good looking, and where the working conditions may be fine from the national labor legislation's point of view. But we help them learn about the India's way of doing business and see the informal part of the production chains, visit the home workers, see the subcontractor units, where all these people, migrant workers coming from different parts of the country, illiterate workers, children, are exploited. Because nobody knows about these factories.
Nobody knows, and honestly, when we buying a shirt, do we actually care that it's actually a risk-free product or not? And this is a controversy that many brands actually have faced in the past as well. The US-based brand Nike has faced it, Gap has faced it, and both the companies have promised to ensure a very stringent audit that they are not involved in carrying products which are exploiting laborers in sweatshops in Southeast Asian countries. But what's the reality? Let me take you through this. This is actually a brick factory in India. This is how clay bricks are being molded into the red bricks. And the lady that you were listening to is explaining her experience of what's happening in this brick factory. These are small units, just like probably larger than a house right next to your neighborhood house. And this is where these people live. This is where they eat. This is how they have to work, make about 3,500 bricks a day per person. If they don't do it, they don't get to eat. And well, all of them, and most of them, in fact, I should say, are paid very less. Take a listen.
The kiln owner forced me to make 3,500 bricks every day. If I fell sick, his guards would scold me and beat me up.
They tortured me a lot. They beat me up daily for different reasons. You didn't make enough bricks. This brick isn't good enough. The clay isn't properly molded. They came up with such excuses. I'm a simple farming man. I just want to go home.
Well, this is one of the ways in which forced labor is used in making cheap bricks, which results in cheap houses, and that's one form of modern slavery. How are they recruited, Manoj? How do they get people to work in this brick kiln? What happens when these workers are approached that, do you want to work in a brick factory? Why do they agree to these jobs?
These people come from areas where they don't have jobs. Most of them are landless, and they are recruited by people who have connections with the brick kiln owners, and in most of the time, either a full family or a entire community is taken to the brick kilns, and it's a piece rate based, as the women said. It's a piece rate based work, and the piece rate is so low and the target is so high that they have to work 16 hours a day to earn a basic living. And most of these people are heavily, under debt.
Absolutely.
And they can't leave those places because sometimes they don't speak the local language where they have landed, and they don't have any network around them.
Does that happen in your case, Manoj, when you actually go out and seek help of authorities to rescue workers from units like these?
Devina, what we are doing in the case of brick kilns, we work in Nepal, and we work with authorities, we work with local civil society groups, and we have developed a standard for the brick kilns to follow, and the market is responding to the basic standards they have to maintain if they want to actually sell the bricks in the market. So it's around the Kathmandu Valley, which is working very well, and we are planning to take that system to India where this kind of work can be addressed that way. If the market denies to buy these bricks, unless the unit owners or raise their standards, it would become very difficult to actually.
So it starts with the consumers, is what you're saying. Yasin is saying slavery in all its form must be abolished. It's really a terrible human crime. Absolutely. Please keep sending your comments. What's the way, Manoj, that we can check a product? Because often you just go and you see which is the cheapest one on a sale and you buy that product.
Devina, GoodWeave has very successfully established a model in the carpet sector in which around 300 companies worldwide in the US, UK, Germany, Australia and other places have joined GoodWeave to make sure that their supply chain is clean, no child labor is engaged. And then we provide a consumer-facing label to those companies to put on the certified products. And the companies receive good response from the consumers. The point here is, unless the product is available for people to buy, it's really hard to actually, figure out what the response of the consumers would be.
Which company is doing what? I mean, those companies that are associated with you would be carrying the tag, but most of the companies do not. So perhaps the solution is that if they carry a tag, I'm sure that at least I won't buy a product with risk. Would you?
But what assures that even if there's a tag, then how does a customer be assured that they're not exploiting the labor?
So if there are companies like GoodWeave which mention that we will check the supply chain, and that's a valid question, how do you assure that that the person who is a manufacturer of, say, this coat and is going through a supply chain from India where this coat is being made and then shipped across the world is not indulging in child slavery or forced labor? How do you ensure that? Because it's very easy to say we sign a contract and this happens. How do you monitor it?
So GoodWeave, you are right. I mean, it is very, very crucial that the label is trusted by people who are buying it. And for that, GoodWeave invests huge, hard work and make sure that, all the supply chain the company is using is monitored regularly.
Do you conduct your own investigation?
Yes, we have our monitoring teams, and they are based in the communities where the production is happening.
Correct.
And they follow international protocol. They follow the best practices.
My question is, why isn't the enforcing agency doing that? So Sri Hari, for example, says enforcing agency in India is dead, so slavery is running in India. Well, Sri Hari's views are that. Robert from UK has also written to us, slavery is still a massive problem in Africa and the Middle East. And as I said in the beginning of the show, 18.4 million in India, according to the Global Slavery Index of 2016. So it's massive in India as well, Robert. And Cecil from Canada is watching. What's the situation there, Cecil? Do let us know. But it's an important point. Why the enforcement agency is not doing it? For example, in the UK in 2015, we actually had the Modern Slavery Act that was passed, which meant that every company beyond a turnover of 32 million pounds, if I'm correct, global turnover, has to actually publish their data of their supply chain, who is involved in which production center, in which country, and what have they done to ensure that they are risk-free. Also, Australia has started a similar program this year, making companies liable for disclosing where are their global units. And as we're looking in the world, more globalization is happening. People are coming, investing in countries like India because it's cheap labor. The question is, like Yasin is saying, those companies employing forced labor must be punished. What is the penalty? What is the punishment, Manoj?
So two things. One, you asked about why authorities are not able to do it. The problem is that authorities only know the universe of production, which is formal universe. So as I said, around 84% of the universe which is producing is informal. So the government doesn't have that data. Number two is that the capacity of the enforcement authorities is limited. So the government would have to work on building that capacity so that the laws can be enforced. But even if the laws are enforced, they may not be reaching to the informal part of the supply chain, which is spread in the communities. The solution here is that the companies who would like to work in the space of ethical, production and a responsible business space, which is now welcomed by the consumers as well, because there is a consumer movement behind it. So the companies who would like to operate in that space should be facilitated and supported to see the better side of it.
And the business side of it. Absolutely. But we'll talk all about that on Work Life India in just about half an hour. I'll also have Colin Gonzalez, who is a human rights activist, who will be joining me just in half an hour on the BBC World Service and BBC World News. So do tune in. Keep sending your questions. We'll be taking all of them in our show. Thank you for joining in.